Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are today. Happy Sunday to all of you. We are going to be doing a live stream. It's going to be a rather lengthy live stream, so hopefully it won't turn into be a boring one. So first, let's check in. I see Nutria on the chat message box. How is the volume? Can you hear me versus the plane? Before we get started, let's just do a quick sound check. Let me know if you guys are hearing me properly. So I'm just going to type in chat, make sure we got everything okay and everyone can hear me. Awesome. Okay, so I recently came back from Nashville, Tennessee for a lovely vacation with my wife, and I flew back on Westjet on a Q8 or a Dash 8 turboprop. So thanks for letting me know, everybody. Maris, thank you. So I figured I would treat everybody to the same exact flight that I took back. Now, it is long. It's about a 2-hour flight, so I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do for 2 hours in the air. Maybe sing, dance. We'll see. I'm hearing that the audio is a little low, so maybe I'll jump up my microphone a little bit here and see if that helps. There we go. So I'm jumping up my microphone a little bit more. You guys tell me if that made a difference or not. So we'll try that. So this is a Dash 8 turboprop aircraft. It's made by FlyJSim, and it's available on the X-Plane store. It's not as feature-rich as the Zibbo, but it's still a good aircraft nonetheless. A couple of the issues, it's not fully simulated, so the autopilot for vertical navigation is not simulated. You have to kind of do it yourself. So it is what it is. This is only my second time flying this aircraft, so I am not going to be a pro by any means at all. So hopefully that you guys will get to see this aircraft in action and decide whether or not this is something that you want to buy or deal with later. So here we go. So the first thing, let's go over the flight information today. We're going to be leaving Kilo Bravo November Alpha in Nashville on runway 02 right, and it is quite a bit of taxiing, so I'm just going to start right on the runway today. I know that's not something you should be doing, but we will do that. And we're going to go to Toronto. So I live in Ottawa, so I flew from Nashville to Toronto and then Toronto to Ottawa. Since this is a long enough flight, we'll just simulate one leg. We'll be doing an ILS approach using the frequency 109.70. The approach course is 057, and we have an alternate airport in case things go south. We have the route that we'll be flying today using the latest Air Act 1909. And as you can see, it is a long flight, 566 nautical miles. We'll be flying at 25,000 feet, just under 2 hours in the air, and about 2 hours, 20 minutes gate to gate, but in our case a little faster because we're starting right at the runway. And block fuel that we're taking on for our flight today, about 3,600 kilograms. Now, I'm also going to treat you guys to a map overlay at some point in time. I have a NaviGraph subscription, and on the screen is a moving map with NaviGraph. NaviGraph lets you plot charts. It lets you see the airport approach plates, SID stars, you name it. We can see here I'm at the bottom, and we're going into Nashville. So to keep things interesting later on, I'll probably fire off a little bit into a NaviGraph tutorial to buy some time while we have an hour and 50 minutes in the air. Looking at our approach, we'll be flying into Zig-Am here, and at our 057 approach course, and doing an ILS approach. So a couple things of note: the elevation at this particular airport is 569. Now normally we would plug that into the Zibo, but I'm not quite sure how to do it on the Dash 8, so we'll see if we can figure out. Will we have an hour in the air? And if not, the ILS will bring us down, no problem. Okay, so that is enough yakking. Let's put on the overlay so you guys can see some information. Now, the flight that I'm following is Westjet 3651 or WGA 3651, depending on what you're looking at there. So this is what we'll be simulating. So let's jump into the cockpit here. And let's go have a look at the flight management computer. So this is not like Zibo, so it's using the native X-Plane flight management computer. So that has some good and some bad. So let's go to the flight plan here, and we'll type in where we're leaving. We're leaving from Nashville, which is Kilo Bravo November Alpha. We'll plug that in here to origin. And we'll be going to Charlie Yankee Yankee Zulu, which is Toronto. And the first point on our route is going to be HANG0 or O, sorry. Plug that in there. Let's hit next page. Then we're going to IIU. Now you can see there's a couple IIUs, so if you're not sure which one to use, it shows you the distance here. So this one's 130 nautical miles away, this one's 4,600, so chances are we want the one that's closest, so we'll select that one. Okay, and next we're going to go to ROD. Now, we can fly on a Jet 39 airway here to ROD, but again, on Zibo it would let me do it. For some reason, maybe on the default X-Plane FMC it doesn't like that. Then we're going to fly to YXU, and finally YYZ, which is the VOR here in Toronto. So now we'll move over to departures and arrivals, and we'll select our departure as being runway 02 right. And we'll now go over to departures and arrivals and select an ILS 05 for our arrival runway, and lock that in by clicking execute. Let's look at our climb. I said we'll be doing a flight level of 25,000 feet, so FL250, and plug that in. Once I figure out where that is, there we go. Now, on the Zibo mod, there's lots more of information. You have to put in your temperature, you have to put in your flaps, your N1 speeds. Not a lot of that it really exists on the native X-Plane FMC, but that's fine. So now let's go over here to legs, and let's just make sure we don't have anything that's going to hang us up. We got the first bug here, this discontinuity. We'll select the one below it and then select it to get rid of it and execute. And that's it. I don't see any vectors or anything bad, so I think we're all set to go here. So I like to kind of have this on program mode, so it shows us we're going to go from runway 02 right to this Hanggu, and then on and on. And it looks like we have quite a ways to go to our top of descent. So we'll see what happens there. And I'm just going to look here. Things look okay. I'm not quite sure why it shows that they're 1,400 nautical miles away when our total distance is only 500, so something's up. So I think it's this IIU waypoint is messing us up here. So I think I'm going to remove this just for safety here. So I'll tell you what I'll do just for safety. Let's go right to, I'm looking at YXU. So that is 200 knots. So I'm gonna move YXU up. Cool. And I'm gonna move YXU up again. And I'm going to move it up one more time. And put that there, if it lets me do that. Guess it doesn't like it. Just don't know why. H-A-N... Ah, I spelt it. H-A-G-N-O. That is what's going on, folks. H-A-G-N-O. Perfect. I buggered up. Now, sometimes, if things go really bad, you just type in the, like here. So things are kind of really all screwed up. So this is a good lesson for you guys to learn how to fix that. So if things kind of go all whacked like that, all you got to do, go in, change your origin to something other than the one it was. There you go. And now we can put it back and start all over again. So let's do it properly with the right spelling this time. Kilo, Bravo, Nancy, November, Alpha, 2, Charlie, Yankee, Yankee, Zulu. This is called a reset, folks. Now let's type it in properly this time. H-A-G-N-O. There we go. IIU. 130. Perfect. ROD. YXU. And YYZ. So now let's have a look. Yeah, this is much better than 14,000 or 1,400 nautical miles off track. So we'll go back into departures and arrivals. Select 02R. We'll go back into departures and arrivals and select ILS 05 for our runway and lock that in by hitting execute. We'll go over here to legs and make sure we get one buggy bug here. So we'll move Dupa up. Yink. And that's it. So yeah, things are looking okay here. I don't see something crazy like a 5-hour flight or longer. And let's make sure the cruising altitude is put back in at 25,000 feet. So you can put it in like this, or you can do FL250 as it did here. So now I'll go back to program mode, and you can see here we're at about 600 nautical miles, which is close to what I was planning for today. So that is bang on to what we wanted. Cool. All right, so now let's have a look. Again, this is a Dash 8 turboprop plane. I've only flown it once before, so this is my second time. So there's a lot going on here. So, hey, Joseph, how you guys doing? Sorry for the little confusion. So I'm going to recreate the flight that I did in Nashville earlier on my vacation in this Dash 8 turboprop aircraft. So the first thing we're going to do is change the course. We're on runway 02 right, so let's drag this course to 020, and eventually we'll find that almost. There we go. You can see here at the bottom we got ILS 1 with a course of 020. Let's change the heading also to 020. There we go. This one is very difficult, I find, because it's hard to get it precise because you're dragging up and down. But again, this is something new, a new aircraft. We're going to change the nav source to our flight management computer. So we're going to go to this nav source button and drag it up. So ILS 2, and there we go, FMS 1. So we can see our first waypoint here is Hango, H-A-G-N-O, and I'm just going to check that out, H-A-G-N-O, and 29 nautical miles, so that looks right. So essentially that is that. So we set our heading, we set our course, we changed our nav source to the right one. We're now going to go over here to the altitude bug and drag it up to 25,000 feet. Now, this is one of the things that, is not so forgiving of this aircraft versus, the Zibbo. You're kind of on your own here. So, ultimately, if you mess up, there is no vertical navigation in this plane. So, you can't just simply turn on your autopilot and relax like in the Zibbo. You have to essentially manage every aspect of this plane. So, there's no, when I engage VNav, it's not actually simulated in this aircraft, so it won't work. So we'll have to use a combination of altitude select. I don't really know. We're going to play and find out. So let's go ahead and set up our flaps. We'll go down to flaps 5. There we go. And to be honest, I think we'll do the rest when we're in the air. So before we take off, thanks, Marco. I appreciate that. I made a few adjustments, so I'm hoping that the audio is okay. Let's also point out something here. There is a spoilers for flight and taxi. So right now I'm in kind of taxi mode. So if you go to flight, I'll show you what I mean. So if I put it in taxi mode here and look outside, you can see the spoilers aren't up. But if I go and flick it up to flight mode here, the spoilers come down. So that kind of slows me down a little bit there. So it's kind of actually behaving reverse to what I wanted. I would have assumed in taxi mode they came up, so that basically I would have had a little bit of slowness, but I'm going to put it in taxi mode for now. Hey, Brazil from Canada. So I don't know what the time zone is, but it's 2:41 Eastern Standard Time right now. So let's go ahead and have a look at the mode control panel one more time. We're going to put it on navigation mode. And I really don't know about the altitude thing until we get in the air. We'll have to figure that out. Let's look at our overhead control panel. Turn the taxi lights off. Our landing lights are good. This particular Dash 8 does not require you to set the cabin pressure. It's automatic. So it's not fully simulated in the vertical navigation, but it's kind of got some other features like auto cabin pressure. Hey, Dave. Thanks for joining me today. Hey, Don. That's awesome. I had a great time in Nashville. So I got to see a lot of museums and a show at the Grand Ole Opry. So I got to see Carrie Underwood. It was awesome. So again, I'm going to just warn you guys, I have not flown this aircraft more than once. So this is my second time. Tonight's flight will not be smooth, and it will be long. It's a 2-hour flight back to Toronto, but it is what it is. So I'm going to take off the parking brake, and let's go ahead and get this bird in the air. So I believe 160 knots is kind of the climb speed on this bird. And I believe 80 knots is when we rotate. So I'm going to start pulling back here. There we go. Looks like I got a positive rate. So I'll go ahead and put the landing gear up. I'll put my flaps up.
Bank angle, bank angle.
And already I'm not doing the best. It's warning me here. So let's see what happens. I'm going to bring it down a little bit because I want to maintain around 160 knots as my ideal speed is kind of what I want to get to. So there we go. So I'm going to engage the autopilot now. And I'm going to engage the vertical speed. And we'll see what that does because I really don't know how this particular flight management autopilot works right now. I'm going to figure this out as we go. So if I go here to Alt Select, what's that going to do? That doesn't look like it's going to do what I want. It looks like it's going to maintain a negative vertical speed. So I don't want that. But what if I go over here? And what if I go nose up and down and drag that up 1,000? Is that going to be okay? Let's see what happens. I'm slowly letting go to the yoke to see what happens here. That doesn't look too good. So obviously that wasn't the right button. So here, let's now go and put that back into vertical speed mode. And then I'm going to start letting go. So as you can see, we're learning together here, folks. It's not windy here right now. Okay, so I'm letting go in the yoke. So basically vertical speed mode is kind of where I put it. I guess I pressed it once and it went to a pitch hold. So it's holding this pitch. I'm going to slow down a little bit. Now this is fully manual. There's no auto throttle on this particular aircraft at all. Everything is manual. So as you can see, I'm kind of speeding a little bit. I'm going to press Alt Select again. Now we're in vertical speed mode, and we got lots of time, so I'm going to try for 1,000 feet per minute, and let's see if we can get that going. So it looks like, yeah, I think we got this. So again, let's have a look outside. This is a Dash 8 turboprop from Bombardier. You can purchase it on the X-Plane store. I think I paid about $30 US for it. And it's commonly flown by Porter Airlines. And I actually had no idea that it was also flown by Westjet. So as I was mentioning earlier in the stream, I did a vacation in Nashville for about 4 days. I really enjoyed it, saw a lot of things, went to the Grand Ole Opry, went to the outlet malls, did the walk around Broadway, saw some interesting things that I've never seen in Canada, those electric scooters. So I don't know if you guys are aware of that or not, but in Nashville there was these electric scooters that you use the Lyft or Uber app, and you can get on the scooter and essentially go anywhere you want and just pay for so much a minute. So yeah, it was a really great time. But I thought, I haven't streamed in a while, so I figured I'd recreate the flight back home from Nashville to Toronto. So we're in this Dash 8 turboprop plane. It's got a max speed of about 220. And it's a beauty. I actually enjoy looking at it. And after looking at it now, I guess we got to go back into the cockpit and turn off the landing lights. So let's go do that. There we go. Now we can go back to looking at the aircraft. Thanks, Vegas. I'm actually going to Vegas in December, so that's my next trip. I might not live stream that one because that's a 6-hour flight from Ottawa, so that's a lot of talking to do for 6 hours straight. Hey, Don. So we're on our way up at a very slow rate of ascent, about 1,000 feet a minute, but we have a lot of time together today, so there's no real rush. I'm not a pro, so I hope today is not taken as a tutorial of how you should do it. This is my second flight in the turboprop. It is not something that I'm an expert in. I really like this aircraft. I just wish that FlyJSim, the company that makes it, would spend some time to simulate the vertical navigation feature so that this way you can use the autopilot for that. That would be really awesome if they were to do that, so that's kind of cool. So Don saying the scooters are a hot debate. Yeah, I mean, on one hand, I kind of saw the scooters as being neat as a tourist. On the other hand, I could see that pair Broadway and the boozing with the scooter, and you got some bad trouble. So, you know, something interesting, but I guess something that should be controlled a little bit. So let's have a look at the aircraft. We have our yoke. We have quite a different flight setup, actually. So we have a strange flight display. Looks like on the first officer screen, they replaced the movable map with the electrical or engine panel. So too bad for the first officer, I guess. So we have all the information we need right now. So we're in LNAV mode, which is basically controlling our left and right, or our long and latitude there. And we're at a speed of about 207 knots, and we're descending a little bit, so that means I should probably up the throttle a little bit, so I'll do that. Not a lot, but a little bit. And we're 8,000 feet-ish, climbing to 25,000 feet. Moving over here a little bit, we can see on our flight display, our primary flight display, that our ground speed is 245 and our air speed is 246 or around that. We're following our waypoint to Hango, which it looks like here we have about 3.6 or 3.5 nautical miles to go before we turn again. Looking at our engine information, this is typically on the Boeing 737-800. This is generally where you would see your N1 speeds. This aircraft also has something weird, that when you pull back on the throttle, it actually goes into reverse. So rather than actually turning on your reverse thrusters to slow down, you pull back on the throttle all the way to what would be idle on the 737-800, and it goes into reverse, and essentially that's the reverse thrust. We have our controls here for landing gear and our landing flaps. From what I read on the tutorial, is once we get into the our cruising altitude, we're supposed to turn off our standby hydraulic pressure, and we're supposed to turn off our fuel pumps. So I'm not quite sure why, but it wants us to do that. It also wants us to change from this MCR mode to MCL for the prop. So again, don't know why, but if you guys do, would love to know why. I'll post some more tutorials on this as I learn more, but the Zibbo mod is definitely more forgiving, that's for sure. And then we go over here and we see the electrical information on the page. We can see our hydraulic pressure, our battery, all the information that we would need to see. But typically that would be the primary flight display for our first officer. So we're not going to get a lot of help from our first officer. And looking over here, the same thing. We're now heading on to our next waypoint, which is IIU, India Uniform. And the speed is a little bit higher than you would typically climb at. But because it is a rather long flight, and I said I'm not a pro at this particular thing, I'm okay with that for now. But is that what you should do if you're really flying this professionally? No. You probably fly it around the 200 to 220 mark. So the other thing I noticed in playing around here is that I'm going to try to get it into view at the same time, but it's going to be hard. There's this little button down here called WXTRR, and if I press it, you can see here WX is on. Press it again, terrain is on. So now if I'm getting into any terrain that may cause me a problem, it'll come up on the screen. So the terrain is simulated in this, so that's kind of cool. What else can I show you guys? I guess we can look at the ILS. The radios are quite different as well. So we're going to be flying in on runway 5 using an ILS frequency of 109.70. And we can see here that right now it's 110,500. So let's go ahead and figure out how to change that. So I think I go into the standby area over here. And yeah, so that's kind of odd. So let's actually try selecting. There we go. So I select ILS 1. Now I'm going to tune this to 109.70. And 109.70, and I think if I press it again, there we go, it switches from standby over to active. So let's do it over here as well. Select ILS 2, 109.70, and lock that in. Is everyone still with me? Let's just do a quick check. Everyone awake? I'm not putting you guys to sleep too much. The sound is good. Can you guys hear me fine? I'm still trying to tweak my audio for the next tutorial, so give me a shout out in the chat. It's been a little quiet if things are still okay. I'll type something as well. So just respond back to me either in the chat or let me know if you can hear me and if everything is okay. Looks like we're still climbing. Thanks, Don. So we're at 13,000 feet. Normally we would go in about 8%. From my reading of this and watching some YouTube videos. Thanks, Raw. I was reading that generally speaking, you would do about an 8-degree pitch here. That's kind of like the magic number there. Oh, wow, look at that. We got Munich, we got Australia. I saw Brazil earlier, and we even have Dawn in Nashville, which is where I'm flying from. So that's awesome. I got a full range of people today. And what I'll do, let's have a quick look here at NaviGraph. We got some time. We got 10,000 feet to go. Let's look at NaviGraph, and I'll explain what that looks like. So NaviGraph is a subscription service that you pay in different ways. You could pay monthly, you can pay yearly, you can pay for just data, and you can even have to you can pay for charts, or you can pay for data, or you can get their ultimate, essentially, which is both. So generally speaking, I buy it about every other month. And so right now what you're seeing is the full flight on the screen. Hey, Virginia. Hey, that's awesome. I'm seeing a shout out from Virginia. So this is NaviGraph. I love it because it has all your approach plates in there. So if we look at, for example, over here, we're flying into Toronto at the top. So if I click this, it's going to give me all the information for the airport on the screen. It's going to show me that the elevation of the airport is 569 feet. If I go ahead and click on this little flag here, it's going to bring up on the left-hand side all the stars, all the approaches, basically your runways. It's going to bring up all the taxi information, all your SIDs, basically everything. Oh, and Romania too. That's awesome. We got everybody covered here tonight, guys. So, for example, if I wanted to find out how do I get into, let's say, this runway 5 approach chart. Let's just go over here to approach charts, and we're going to fly into ILS runway 05. So if I click that, I get the full approach plate here in the screen. So I can see that the localizer, or ILS, is 109.7, and I can see our final approach course is 57 degrees. I can see the airport elevation on this as being 569. I can see kind of like our primary fix before we start our ILS approach here, or IF, which is Zigum, or however you pronounce that. I can see that I should be at 3,000 feet on that particular approach. And there's a really cool feature. But first, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to hop back into the aircraft really fast, turn that off, and just check out. And yeah, we're still doing okay. We're still basically going up. We're at 17,000 feet, so I still got some time to show you NaviGraph. So we go back here again, and there's this cool feature over here in NaviGraph. It says overlay on en-route map. So if I click that, I can actually overlay the approach plate onto the map of where I'm flying. And this works for all kinds of things. So if I was doing SIDS and stars, so let's say I'm not going to do one for today, but let's say I was going to do a star. I don't know. There's a lot. You can see, like, there's a lot. So one of the problems is, hey, Jim, I agree with you. The only problem for me is it's a bit expensive for us Canadians. We're in Europe. The money is almost double. So the $8 is, well, not quite double, but $8 is about $12, $13 Canadian. So it can get expensive, but it's really awesome. So now if I want to, like, if you go to SimBrief, which is something that I showed you guys in my tutorial, and you go to SimBrief and you'd be like, which star do I use? Which runway do I use? Like, unless you're a pro, which I'm not, you don't know. So you go over here to star and you say show overview, and it overlays them all. So this is awesome. So I can see that I'm flying over here, and I'm flying on this red line essentially. And then these are all the stars that I can choose. I could choose the Nuber 4, the Navgo 4, the Viraco. So you can now determine, well, if I'm coming in here, potentially I would come in on the Nuber 4 star. Or I could maybe veer off this jetway a little bit and come in on the Virac 09 star. So again, this is a great system that you can see on an overlay all of the particular things that you're looking at. So this is awesome. So again, so you can do all these things. So for now, I'm just going to use it to show you a movable map of where we are. So we are now on our way towards our next waypoint, and we're kind of on this jetway here. So anyway, that is NaviGraph. We're going to go back to that, back and forth, and I'll recap the scenario in a little bit. So let's take that off for now. Let's go back to this. We're approaching 25,000 feet, which is where we want to go today. So hey Don, so again, NaviGraph is about $8 euros, 8.50-ish euro for a 1-month subscription, or I think it's around $80 for a year. So because you guys are in the States, it's not such a big thing for you, but for us lowly Canadians, where our dollar's worth less than you guys, and also Europe, it can add up quickly. So we are $14 Australians. So there you go. So it's about the same in Canada. So I guess, well, we're 12 something in Canada, I think, for the NaviGraph subscription. So I'm going to bump up our RPMs here a little bit because we're losing some speed. We got about 4,000 feet to go. And then it looks like about 45 nautical miles to our next waypoint. So again, we are flying in the Dash 8 turboprop aircraft from Bombardier. This is a purchased airplane from xplane.org store. I believe it's on sale right now for $30 US. And it's a great aircraft, although I was hoping for a little bit more. I find that inside the cockpit, it's not nearly as slick or clear from compared to the Zibbo mod or the 737. It also doesn't simulate the vertical navigation, so you can't just go and turn the autopilot on and relax and go for a coffee and come back and have your plane still take off. But and it also doesn't have an auto throttle, which basically means there's no TOGAF or takeoff go around button. There is no managing for you the speed, so you can say basically go to this altitude. So you're kind of riding the throttle a lot, but you know, whatever. It's practice, so it's gonna help you one way or another. And I do love the look of this aircraft. It's probably my favorite aircraft for look. So if it was more simulated like the Zibbo, I would probably be flying this puppy all the time. So for $30, you get this aircraft. It's kind of, I'd say, 60 to 70% implemented. It has liveries for various. It's got Porter, it's got WestJet, it's got a bunch of others. So all in all, it's not a bad aircraft to look at. Looks like we got someone from Italy as well. Fabulano. So pretty cool. So let's have a look at what's going on. 22,000 feet. Let's look at the flight management computer here. We are 35 nautical miles away from India uniform. And then we're on to ROD next. We look like we have about another 395 nautical miles to go before we get to our top of descent. G'day, Kiwi. I am doing pretty good. I guess Australia is about 12 hours ahead or behind, so I hope good morning doesn't mean it's 3 a.m. for you in Australia. If so, Congratulations for tuning in that early to see little old me. Hey, that sounds like a great idea, flying vor to vor. I'm going to write that down. I have not done that before. But maybe what we'll have is what we'll call Ghetto Day. So, Ghetto Day would be flying to ADF, flying to VORs, doing VFR. So, I think we'll do Ghetto Day one day in the future. So that would be kind of cool. So let's have a look. I heard the little noise. The noise basically means that we're 1,000 feet away. Again, unlike the flight management software in the 737, it will keep going. It's not going to stop at 25,000 feet. It's just going to keep going. So yes, Jim, 4 a.m. it is. So kudos to you for watching little old me at 4 a.m. from Ottawa. That's awesome. I'm doing a lot of work on Amazon Web Services lately, and we've been talking to a lot of people in Amazon from Australia, so that's kind of cool. All right, 25,000 feet. Let's figure out what next to do, because I don't know. I'm hoping if I press this button here... What if I press this pitch hold? Is it going to stay there? I'm watching it very closely because I don't know. All right, I think it's still moving slightly, but it seems to be doing something. So again, I don't know this aircraft. This is new to me, so this is not a tutorial where I'm normally going to show you all the magic. It did turn off my autopilot for some reason. I don't know why. So I'm turning it back on. I'm going to put it on nav mode.
Caution.
There we go. LNAV, pitch hold. And let's just say there. So again, I have no idea what I'm doing. This is... Hey, Everly. How you doing? Where are you from? We got Romania, we got Italy, we got Australia, we have some people from Nashville. I'm from Ottawa, Canada, Ottawa, Ontario. We're flying from Nashville to Toronto. So it looks like I figured out how to level off at 25,000 feet, folks, so I'm proud of myself there. So let's have a look outside. Beautiful view. We're in the Turboprop Dash 8. Looks like there's an airport down below there. Not sure what that is, but it looks like there's something down there. So getting back to some earlier comments. Marius said that we should do a vor-to-vor video. So I like where you're going there. So I think we should have what I'll call Ghetto Day. And Ghetto Day will be maybe 3 or 4 different hops. Maybe what we'll do is we'll fly from Ottawa to Toronto and then Toronto to somewhere. And we'll go only through vor-to-vor. We won't use the flight management computer. We'll kind of go it through the old school way. We'll try ADF as well, which is an even older navigational radio system there, if you will. And then we'll do a little VFR at the same time, too. So, yeah, that'll be fun. I'll call it Ghetto Day. So maybe I'll do that next Sunday. If you guys think that'll be cool, let me know next Sunday. If any of you guys want to do some research for me of where I should fly to, let me know. And we'll have Ghetto Day. Tampa, Florida. Well, when I was in Nashville last week, Sam, it sure felt like I was in Florida. I think someone told me it was 105. I don't know if it's Fahrenheit Celsius, but it was hot. It's not something a lowly Canadian is used to. We're used to maybe 34 max Celsius in the summer. It was roasting in Nashville the week I was there, the week of the 12th to the 16th. It was pretty crazy heat-wise. So we're flying in the Dash 8 turboprop made by Bombardier. It's going to take us a couple hours to get there. I think we have about another hour and 30 minutes to go. As you can see on the screen, I'm recreating Westjet Flight 3651, which is something very common that Westjet flies from Toronto to Nashville and back. We're at an altitude of 25,000 feet, and our speed is about 368 knots. Hey Simon, thanks for watching my video. I think it's time to do a recreation of some of my videos, so probably I'll do a side-by-side of Zibbo Mod versus the built-in X-Plane FMC, and then I might even start doing some general aviation videos as well, but no short of things to teach, that is for sure. So we're inside the cockpit now of our Dash 8 turboprop, and well, let's just do another look around. You can see it's quite real. It looks quite well, the cockpit. The only thing that I wish is that it simulated the vertical navigation. So we can see that the captain has a primary flight display and all the information we need. However, the first officer has a electrical screen. I could not see if there was a button somewhere to switch the electrical screen to a primary flight display. So that could be something that I have to read in the manual to see whether or not that's there. Looking at the FlyJSim videos, it recommends that once you're at this stage of the flight, you would turn off the standby hydraulic pressure. I don't know why. And it also recommends that you should turn off tank 1 and tank 2 auxiliary pumps. Again, I don't know. So, hey, Raw, I'm glad you like that idea of a ghetto kind of approach. And then over here, under engine controls, it suggests that we flick from MCR to MCL once we're in the air for our propellers. Again, no idea why. So if any of you guys have some time to Google that up and find out what the difference between MCL and MCR is, or why in this particular aircraft you turn off your auxiliary fuel pumps, or why you turn off your standby hydraulic pressure, well, those would be cool things to see. Looks like we got our buttons over here for changing the view on our primary flight display. Looks like we're looking at about 40 nautical miles ahead, so nothing wrong with that. We have our navigation radios over here. So our VHF radio is what we talk to the tower and ground control. We have our ILS frequencies. And we have our ADF, which are radios to tune into. So someone mentioned earlier that the VOR, that is one type of navigational radio. ADF is another. So I don't use... so just speaking, I noticed in the chat here that Rawcon has mentioned that... it would be nice with the Orthros scenery pack, and I don't disagree. I have a really high-end machine. I have a i7 processor. I think it's like an 8800 or something. 89. I'm forgetting exactly. Well, you know what? I can do an MS Info 32 here and tell you I have a Z170X Zotac gaming motherboard, gigabyte motherboard. I'm running Windows 10 Pro, 32 gigs of RAM, and I'm running an i7-6700 CPU with a 980 Ti graphics card that's liquid cooled. And I'm running a solid state for my hard drive for Windows, which is a Samsung Pro, quite expensive, and I'm running a solid state for X-Plane 11, but not the Pro version, so it's a little slower. I'm going to slow down a little bit here. So notice that if if I zoom in here, I'm going above the speed, so I'm reducing my props here a little bit. I'm going to try to keep it at 240. Again, this is not an aircraft that has an auto throttle, so every aspect of the flight from takeoff to descent and cruise, you have to manually model. So I'm going to try to keep my speed around 240 so that I don't bore you guys out too much. So I'll see how that fares for now and keep an eye on it. So getting back to Ron saying ortho scenery pack there, I don't want to use a scenery pack when I'm streaming because I have a 21:9 monitor. I have a Acer Predator. It's 34 inches in diameter, wide. So it's wider than it is tall. So it's a really odd resolution. So for those of you that are watching my stream right now, I'm streaming at 3400 by 440, which is 2K. But if you're running a 1080p traditional monitor, you're probably seeing a black bar above and below. And the reason for that is, again, I have a widescreen monitor, so it's wider than it is tall. So that's probably why you have that particular information. So again, if I was to take the 2K stream that I'm doing now at 21:9 with the Ortho scenery pack, chances are it would reduce the frames per second down from 60 to like 40. And since most of the work I'm doing is tutorial work for you guys or teaching you guys stuff, I'd rather focus on high quality audio and high quality tutorials than slowing down the simulator with the graphics. So that's kind of why I don't have orthos. But perhaps I am planning on buying a brand new gaming PC in about, I'd say, a month. So I'm going to get an i9. I'm going to get the 2080 Ti. So I'm hoping that those things will allow me to beef up the graphics even more and maybe try for 4K simulation. And potentially even virtual reality, do a video with VR. That might be kind of cool. I saw something called X-Plane 11 360. So if you YouTube that, I saw a couple people, they created a X-Plane video, and then they re-recorded it in every possible angle and uploaded it to the YouTube. So it's almost like going on Street View and seeing the 360 videos panning around on Google Earth or Google Maps. Someone did that in X-Plane, and I think that would be really cool to try to replicate something like that on X-Plane. I think it would be work intensive, so if you had like a 30-minute flight and you had to record, say, 6 different viewing angles, you're probably looking at, 6 times, 30 minutes, and then however long it takes to render, but that would be something really cool I'd like to do. Yikes, Marius, 12 FPS, yikes, that's all I got to say about that. Kudos to you for keeping through it, though. All right, taking a sip of a nice diet drink. I am really excited, guys. I just found a simulator in Ottawa or Gatineau called GoSim Go. So I'm going to write that down in the chat for you. So GoSim Go is a company that I found in Gatineau that has a Mach 737-800 cockpit. So next Saturday, I'm going to be flying from Ottawa to Toronto in a Boeing 737-800 full cockpit, exactly like you would get in real life. And I'm going to print out my flight charts from NaviGraph. I'm going to bring everything with me. And I'm going to ask the instructor to let me go to see if I can do it all myself and see how it goes, and have a flight instructor there with me if things go south. But I'm really looking forward to that. It's not cheap. It's about $140 an hour. So I'm hoping that it only takes about an hour, but that is something that I'm really looking forward to, being able to go into a actual 737 cockpit and take some pictures in there that I can share with you guys. And if that works out well and things are like I enjoy the experience, I'm going to ask them if I can record not Saturday, but if I can record future flights there. So then not only will I be able to do live streams of the Zimbo mod, I'd be able to do it in an actual 737 cockpit. So you'd be able to see me going and flicking all the switches and turning all the knobs with a GoPro or something like that. So again, I'm really looking forward to that next week. That'll be a fun experience. So let's recap. 2 weeks ago, I went on vacation in Nashville. I took Westjet to and from Ottawa to Toronto, and then from Toronto to Nashville. Found out that they had a Dash 8 turboprop aircraft, and that is how they flew from Toronto to Nashville. So I figure I would recreate the flight back. The flight is Westjet 3651. So if you guys look that up on FlightAware, you'll see that it's a very common flight that they do a couple times a day. And that's what we're doing today, folks. I purchased this aircraft on the X-Plane store, which is FlyJSim is the name of the manufacturer. And it's about $30 on sale. And we're at 25,000 feet, going about 353 knots, with an ETA of 2026 Zulu time, which is Greenwich Meanich time, or UTC time, depending on what you prefer. We have about 360 nautical miles to go. So I could speed things up, but I'm having some fun. I get to answer any questions that you guys have too, so that's an opportunity. So let's switch back to NaviGraph for a second. So again, for those of you that are not aware, NaviGraph is a subscription service. It's approximately €8.50 per month. They have plans for data only, and they have plans for charts only, and they have the ultimate plan, which gives you both. What NaviGraph lets you do is see all the approach charts, SID, stars, and airport information for everything that you need. And it's got a really cool feature of a movable map. So as you can see on the screen here, this is me. Started off down below here in Toronto. We look to be about halfway through our journey. And you can change from a low en route map to a high en route map. And you can even plug on a world map. So it looks like we just flew through Kentucky. And we're now in Cincinnati, on our way towards Detroit. And then we'll go from Detroit to Toronto. So maybe if we look out the window around the Detroit area, we might get to see Niagara Falls. Thanks, Don, for the shout out about my profile pic. I had a caricature, if I can pronounce it. I'll just say avatar. How about that? I had an avatar created of me. I'm an avid low carb keto man. So used to be quite heavy in my younger days. Well, I'm still quite young. I'm only in my 30s. But when I was in my teens, I was around 300 pounds. And I founded Low Carb and basically been on a low carb keto lifestyle for the last 10 to 20 years. And now down to around 200 pounds. So I had a avatar created for me when I was doing low carb stuff. Even authored a book, so if any of you are interested, I'll do a shout out in the chat. Lowcarbcoach.com is my other website. I wrote a very simple 100-page book on Create Space. So for those people out there that are not quite understanding and they don't want to invest the time to spend that much time and understand all the nitty-gritty of a keto low-carb diet, I created a very short book for people that I often post for free. But the website, if you guys are interested, have all the information that the book has for free. So again, I don't know where I went off on a tangent on that, but essentially Don mentioned my profile. I just kind of commented my profile is based on an avatar I created for my keto website that I do on the side kind of thing. So we're leaving Cincinnati here. Let's have another look at a feature in NaviGraph that you guys may or may not be aware of. I'm going to put it back into low en route. If I go over here to flights, I can say new flight, and you can see that I can do manual input from a file. So if I was to download a file from SimBrief, but it's also connected directly to SimBrief. So because I went to SimBrief and I generated this flight plan, I can go right here and say use the latest from SimBrief. So that's pretty cool. So if I say this, there, it pulled in my flight from SimBrief. Now, when I flew in from SimBrief, I was flying into runway 15 left, so I'm just going to change that. Go over here to approaches and say I'm going to do ILS runway 05 from final. So, again, if you don't have or don't use simbrief.com, you can go into NaviGraph, plug in a manual route. You can download an FMS package somewhere else and plug it in, or you can just create something on SimBrief and import it for yourself and not have to type it out there. So, hello, Captain Reynolds from Ohio. So we have Ohio, we have Italy, we have Romania, we have Nashville. We have a whole slew of places out here. So again, I now have a moving map on NaviGraph. If I really wanted to find out more information about my arrival, I can go over here to approaches and select show visual runway overview, and I can see the runways that I'll be taking. So we're going to be doing an ILS on runway 5. So let's change that to 5. And I'll say final. So there we go. So now I can see how we're going to come in, and we're going to come in here on this ILS chart. But again, if I was wanting to understand SIDS and stars, I could go over here and click on my Toronto CYYZ, open up the approach list over here, and let's say I wanted to figure out, I don't know, the star for something, but there's just too many of them. Again, I can just go show overview here, and it shows me all the different stars that are there. So for those of you that are wondering, how do I know which star to use? How do I know how to build a flight plan? How do I know which runway to go to? Well, that's basically which ones are opened and which way the wind is blowing, because you're supposed to fly into a runway that the wind is flying. Basically, the wind's going as a headwind. So again, this is simply something to show you if you're interested in that. You can see different approach place. You can see different SIDS and stars. For now, we'll just hide all that information. And let's pop back into the simulator again. And let's recap quickly. We took off from Nashville on runway 02 right. We're flying to Toronto on runway 05. We're doing an ILS approach using the frequency 109.70 with an approach course of 057. You can see the route on the screen. Someone earlier was asking what the route was. I think in the future I'll upload an FMS download so that you don't have to type this in. You can just simply download that. I recently updated the AirAct database using NaviGraph to 1909, and our distance today is about 566 nautical miles, cruising at 250 feet above sea level, and we have about an hour and a half in the air today. And looking at the top of our ticker tape, we're looking about 45% into our flight. We have about another 45 minutes to go until we get to our destination. We took on 3,600 kilograms of fuel. Our zero fuel weight about 25,000, and our takeoff weight was around 28,000 with fuel. Let's go hide that. Have a look at the approach charts. Again, where did I get all this information from? NaviGraph is the answer, as you can see at the bottom of this approach plate. So we're flying into Toronto. Our localizer is 109.70, as I mentioned. Our approach course is 057 with the airport elevation of 569. Now that's pretty important if you were doing a GPS approach. Typically on the 737-800, you would go into your overhead panel and plug that in. But because we're doing an ILS approach, and to be honest, I don't know how to do that in this aircraft yet, that is something you should plug in. But so I'm going to write that down, 569. And maybe since we have 45 minutes left in the air together, we will go do a little digging on how to do that. So let's read the chat. So Raw is saying that if you use Arthros and you just use the photo masks and not the autogen, it doesn't hit performance that much. So maybe I'll give it a try. I will mention I don't do my tutorials for anything other than basically learning and experience, but there is a feature in this where you can sponsor my channel and you can do a super chat. So if those are things that you're interested in, feel free. Not something that I worry about one way or the other. I do this for enjoyment. And as I mentioned, really looking forward to going to the GoSim Go simulator next week. So let's go and figure out how will I set the landing elevation at 569 on this aircraft, because I don't personally see it. Well, I do see landing altitude here. Would this be it? Maybe this is it. So what happens? So unfortunately, another example of it not being simulated, folks. So you can see here, I hear the clicking sound, but it's not actually simulated. So I'm guessing if this was fully working, I would be able to go to the landing bug here and plug that into, say, 1,000 feet, or sorry, 600 feet. It's 569. So I would put it to, say, 570 or 600 feet, but it doesn't look like this particular feature of the Dash 8 is simulated, and that's too bad. So again, that's kind of a common. I don't want to say I wish I didn't buy it, because I really do enjoy this aircraft, but what I would say is I wish more aspects of the aircraft was simulated. So vertical navigation's not simulated. Auto throttle, it's not part of the aircraft, so I can understand that that's not in this. But some of the basic features, if you would like to do a cold start or something like that, or simulate that, it's not there. And while this aircraft does not have auto throttle, it does have automatic cabin pressure, which is kind of cool. So there's nothing really to do. Or on the Zibbo mod, you have to kind of go in and set up your thresholds there. Not so over here. So let's have a look over here. Our ILS is already set up for 109.70, which is where we'll land. I can press the call button. Doesn't work. What about the chime button? Well, at least that's simulated. So again, it's good and bad. I wish there was more aspects of this that were simulated, but it's not. So it is what it is. Let's have a look. Our course is still set to our runway that we took off from. So as we get a little closer, we'll set that to the proper course of 050. Actually, so our ILS frequency, which will be 057. That's our approach course for that. We're looking like we have 209 nautical miles before we get to our next waypoint. So let's have a look at the scenery for a second. So it's a little quiet in the chat, folks, so let me know if the audio is still good. Let me know if there's a future tutorial that you'd like to see. One person mentioned earlier that they like to see Ghetto Day, where we go vor to vor and use ADF and all those, we'll call it ghetto type of navigational aids. So if that's something you'd like to see, let me know. If you would like me to see more Zibbo mod, more native X-Plane videos, you let me know. So now's your opportunity. You're getting me live. So I'd like to know from you, what do you guys think that should be the next video I create or next video tutorial? Would you like to see some general aviation aircraft? Would you like to see some failures, like maybe an engine failure, a takeoff go-around? Really, it's up to you. I do this for me to be able to replay videos because as an IT professional, I tend to jump in and out of different things all the time. So sometimes I'm doing X-Plane, sometimes I'm playing League of Legends, sometimes I'm playing all kinds of random games. Right now I'm playing No Man's Sky. So maybe you'd like to see me stream some of those. I don't know. Versus just aircraft or aviation. So again, let me know what you guys think. And I definitely will take your comments into consideration. So we are on our way to Nashville, flying in the Dash 8. Checking out the views here. I wonder if we can do a roam around the aircraft here. Let's see if I can open up the cabin doors. And it looks like that also is not simulated, so that's too bad. Looks like there is an escape hatch, and that's also not simulated. So let's come over here to the first officer's side view window. Have a look. And what if I kind of go outside the plane and see if I can sneak into the cockpit that way? Maybe that's a way I can get in. Since I can't get through the door, maybe I can sneak in this way. There we go. Ingenuity. We are now inside the cabin of the Dash 8, and as you can see, it is quite small. So I can't say it was the funnest flight for 2 hours to Nashville, sitting so close together. But, you know, we got through it. There's also not a lot of overhead cabin space. So not a lot of room for carry-on luggage in here. Looks like they haven't really integrated handles or anything like that into the scenery here of the overhead compartments. They also didn't put, you know, the Westjet logo on the seats. So perhaps today's video is a bit of a review and might encourage the aircraft owner, FlyJSim, to either point out some things that I just didn't know or wasn't aware of, or make some updates to the aircraft to have the aircraft a little more real. So we got a lot of time left, folks. We got about another 30 minutes, so I'm just going for a little wander. Let's go outside and have a look around again. Something about propeller planes, I just think they're really cool. I just think it's really, really cool. Unfortunately, this one doesn't have all the luxuries of the 737-800 Zibbo mod, but it's still cool. Actually, guys, I have something to talk to you guys about. I just remembered a interesting tidbit the other day, so I'm just going to check. Looks like we still have 183 nautical miles before we have to worry about landing on top of descent. So let me talk to you guys about something I heard the other day, and I want to know in the chat, and I'm going to type it in the chat before I say it. So here we go. All right, I just typed it in the chat. Did you guys know, and I had no idea, that Microsoft is releasing Flight Simulator 2020, and they're going to have a beta very soon. It's going to be available for Xbox and PC. It's supposed to have 4K graphics, and it's supposed to have the most realistic scenery ever seen. Now, I've been flying... I played with Flight Simulator 10 or X Gold. I've played with, I think it was the Flight Simulator. I can't remember the name of it, but there was a Dovetail Games version of the Microsoft Flight Simulator for a little period of time that had some pretty good scenery as well, but it wasn't essentially a knockout, and then they sunset it. But this is supposed to be backed by Microsoft Game Studio like the old game, but with super real graphics, super real 3D buildings, and amazing scenery. So I signed up for the Insider's preview. It's not released right now, but it's supposed to be available in the next month or two for an Insider release. So if you guys are interested in checking that out, make sure you do a search for Flight Simulator 2020. Sign up for the Insider's preview. I think you also have to sign up for Xbox Live, or not live, but you have to log into the Xbox app to sign up as well for feedback. But if it's implemented with the graphics that I'm seeing, it might win me over to do 50% of my videos on that, because it looks really good. So I still enjoy flights for X-Plane 11 for the realism, but it'd be nice to do a relaxing flight once in a while, essentially, on Flight Simulator 2020, if that works out to be all the hype that it's looking like. So we're back inside the cockpit, and we're just going to do some checks here. We're going to Yankee X-ray uniform. We're 165 nautical miles away. We're just on the bare limits of the speed that this aircraft can go. We're at 242 knots, which I think is still a little high for this aircraft after speaking with the folks on the tutorial. Since we're above 25,000 feet, we're supposed to set the altimeter back to the default. So for those of you that are not sure what I'm talking about, or being like, what the heck are you talking about, Willis? I'll explain. This little thing here that says 2981 inches is what our altimeter is based on. That is basically how you know this flight level. So if I was landed on the ground, or if I was on the runway, and the airport was X number of feet above sea level, I should set this altimeter to whatever the airport says it should be, so that basically my altimeter here is correct and it's not off. So in order to do this, you would look up the information in a weather report, essentially, and it would tell you what the altimeter is for that particular airport. Now, I should have done that on takeoff. I didn't. Whoops. So we'll do it now. But for those of you wondering, Generally, in Canada and the US, I think it's different in Europe, there's something called a transition altitude. And the transition altitude in Canada and the US is 18,000 feet. So when you reach 18,000 feet, you set your altimeter back to the standard. So on this aircraft, you can see right now it says push to standard. So right now it's 2981. If I push it, it does nothing. There, if I push it again, it automatically went to 2992. That is the default standard altimeter. So what is supposed to happen essentially is that when you're on the ground, you would set the altimeter to whatever basically the weather report says, ACIS information at that airport is. When you get to 18,000 feet, you then set it back to 2992. And then again on descent, you would then set the altimeter back to whatever it was. And essentially this is to make sure aircrafts don't bump into each other. And aircraft are flying at like 30 seconds apart and maybe only a couple thousand feet apart. So this is ensuring that everybody doesn't get into a little whoopsie, essentially. So let's go and have a look at our flight management computer. We're flying to Yankee X-ray uniform, 145 nautical miles remaining. And about 148 nautical miles, we're going to hit our top of descent and start to descend. Again, since this aircraft doesn't have an auto throttle, it means we have to control the descend speed ourselves. We have to control also the pitch down ourselves. So it should be fun. Should be fun. The last landing I did was a little rough, so I'm sure this one's going to be rough too. It's only my second time flying this aircraft, so we'll see. Let's have a look at the legs. So we'll be going down to 5,600 feet, then down to 3,000, and so on and so on. We're currently in cruise mode right now. There's not a lot of widgets in the default FMC that comes equipped essentially with most aircraft in X-Plane 11. The Zibbo mod has a lot more, but it is what it is. So I'll show you guys that altimeter stuff that I was talking about. We won't set it now because we still got a ways to go. But if we go over here to plugins, I have a plugin called AV Tab. And I'll go ahead and toggle the tablet. Now this is the same tablet that is built into the Zibbo mod. So if you have the Zibbo mod aircraft, this is already built into it. But if you're flying an aircraft that it doesn't have the AV tab built into it, then you have to essentially open up manually like I just did. Now you guys get to see what my actual frames per second is. I'm broadcasting at 60 frames per second. But looks like X-Plane is only handling between 40 and 50 here. So what we'll do, we'll go over here to airports. And Charlie, whoa, I guess I hit the wrong button there. So let's go back into our cockpit. Charlie, Yankee, Zulu. For Lester B. Pearson Airport in Toronto. And here we have all the information we need on our screen. So we see that runway 05, the approach course is 57 as I mentioned earlier, and 109.70. So let's just go check quickly. 109.70 is what we have for our ILS in both the primary and secondary, ILS 1 and 2. So we can see here that we're correct. And at the bottom, what I want you to see here is the weather information, or ATIS. So, hey Ashtran, this is called X-Plane 11. It's a flight simulator where you can get quite real with the physics. So we are flying a Dash 8 turboprop Normally I fly the 737-800 Zibo mod aircraft, so this is X-Plane 11. So getting back into what is an altimeter, I'm just going to zoom in here so that you guys can see. There we go. Okay, so we have 2992 as our altimeter because we are above 18,000 feet. Once we get below 18,000 feet, we need to change the altimeter here to 2980. So again, that A 2980 is what we actually need to set our altimeter to. So I'm just going to write that down. So again, for most of you out there, if you're flying the Zibo mod aircraft, you would look up using the NaviGraph information or your approach charts. What you would do is this. I'll go here and I'll say, here is the approach charts for Toronto, and we'd see up above it says the airport elevation is 569 feet. So you would write that down. You would go into the overhead pane of the 737-800, and you would make sure that your landing altitude was at 569 or whatever the rounding up is of that increment. Generally, it's in hundreds of feet, so it would be about 600. The next thing you're going to do is look up your approach course, which is 057, and your ILS frequency. And that's half the story, if you will. The next thing you'll do is exactly what I just did. Bring up the aviator's tablet. Look up the weather information, which was last updated at 2200. And look for the altimeter of 2980. And this will get updated, so we're going to check again later on in the flight because we might actually have to go in and change that. And that makes sure that the actual altimeter that you're looking at is correct. So 112 nautical miles. Looks like 114 nautical miles to the top of descent. So let's have a look at the scenery. I'm going to take a quick break, grab a glass of water. We'll look at the scenery. I'll be right back in about 2 minutes, folks. All right, everybody, I'm back. Can I get some messages in the chat to make sure everybody is still with me here? It's been a long stream. Normally, I try to restrict my streams to 1 hour in length. But I wanted to give you guys a couple treats. One was flying an aircraft that I have not flown really before at all, just once before. Secondly, as I mentioned, I recently did a trip to Nashville. And I wanted to recreate the Westjet Flight 3651 from Nashville to Toronto. So that's kind of what I wanted to do. So looking at NaviGraph here, so it'd be nice if a few folks can send some messages in the chat to just let me know that you're still alive and I'm not boring the bejeebies out of everybody. So let's have a recap. So this is NaviGraph. Looks like we came quite a ways. We got about 30% left of our flight, maybe 35. We're going to have a look at the live map, the world map. So it looks like we are flying over the water. And perhaps we should be able to see some of Lake Erie and maybe even Niagara Falls out the window in a minute. So I might flick over to that in a minute. See what we end up finding. And then I'm going to overlay the approach chart for runway 05 that we'll be flying into. So now we have all the approach information on the screen when we need it. But we still have quite a ways to go, so there's no urgency yet. We are getting close though, folks. You're going to get to see me land this bird, which I've only really flown like once before, so don't expect wondrous things, but I will try my best. So let's have a look. I got to be cautious here. Again, because we are managing every aspect of this plane, including our throttle. There is no auto throttle. We have to be very diligent of when we start reducing our speed. Hey, Captain. I should start downloading some more scenery as well. So I'm going to see if we can get a view here of Niagara Falls. Not sure if we're going to be able to see it. I think we passed it. But I'm going to see if I can jump out for a bit and see what we can see. Doesn't look like I can zoom in much more than this. And I'm guessing it's around there. Pretty sure that's Niagara Falls. I'm not the best with geography, so feel free to tell me I'm wrong. But I believe that is what we're looking there. So one of the things that I would like to start trying to do in this game as well is I'd like to fly into the St. Martin's Airport. I think it's Princess Juliana, PCM, something like that. PCJM, or I'm not quite sure the IACO. But for those of you that are looking for a really challenging flight, Princess Juliana in St. Martin is a beautiful spot. There is some really good scenery there. And there's no ILS, there's no RNS, there's no GPS. It's a manual. So if you want to practice your skills and do a manual landing into a beautiful beach resort, that would be a really cool place. Currently, I have all the original X-Plane scenery installed, but I'm not running the extras. One of the reasons why I tend not to do a lot of the scenery packages from the X-Plane forums, they often require third-party libraries. So you have to install like this 3D people, 3D objects, then you need the airport runway, and so there's so many of these things you have to install that sometimes it's just too much work. But I have installed quite a few sceneries where they use the default bit widgets that are built in X-Plane, and those sceneries I'm okay with. But some of the ones that require like all these third-party libraries, it just takes too much to do. Inside the replays and recordings in X-Plane, scenarios and replays, it shows that there is a scenario for Chicago and Washington, where they must have some really nice scenery packages or something like that there, if they're showing that they have particular things for that there. I think it's in the flight configuration menu. I won't open it now, but if you were to go to the flight information screen, you can see the various simulations and situations and replays that are there. And there's one for Chicago, and there's one for Washington, and there's several others as well. And it's really realistic, and the scenery is really good. So that is something as well to look at. "60 nautical miles. We're getting close. Soon we'll be starting our descent. It'll be quite a long descent because we have to maintain our speed. We got 65 nautical miles until we start our descent. Because we'll have so much time during our descent, I'm holding off some of the pre-things that I normally do until then, so that we have more time together during the descent. So again, we're going from Nashville to Toronto. We'll be doing an ILS landing. This is a recreation of the flight that I did, or not that I did, that I took, essentially, when I went to Nashville for my vacation. And it's using a turboprop plane that has some issues where not everything's fully simulated. It does have this weight and balance screen here where you can see, you can pick which seats have people in it and which seats don't. You can open the cabin doors and things like that off that. But it's lacking a lot of flight management computer features that are just simply not simulated. So as we get close to the end of our stream, folks, I'd like to once again ask for your feedback. Do you enjoy my tutorials? Should I create more jet ones or more general aviation? Should I start to maybe venture into more simulations like an engine failure? What do you think? What are some future videos that I should create that you guys would be interested in, essentially? Let me know. So the mountain asks, is there a way to fly over the ocean without a drop in FPS? I'm wondering what your reflection settings are. So if your reflection settings are on the high side, potentially that might be one of the issues that's driving that. So go ahead and make sure that you don't have the shadows on, your reflections, and turn down the number of objects. Those are a couple of things you could try to see if that makes any difference for you. Let's have a look again. I'll go outside and I'll open up the aviator's tablet here, and it still shows I'm rocking around 60 frames a second over the video or the water, so that's not too bad. So the other thing I have is another plugin I can show you. It's called Airport Visual System. We'll turn that on, and we're going to be landing into Charlie Yankee Yankee Zulu. So let's press enter there, and I'm going to say destination, Charlie Yankee Yankee Zulu. And this is a handy tool if you ever fly FlyJSim and you're like, the guy tells you you need to take taxiway Alpha Bravo Echo, and you're like, what the, where is that? This is a great tool for that. So as you can see, this is Toronto. We're flying into runway 05, so that is right here. So I'll be touching down here, and then I'll essentially want to be able to go to one of the taxiways. So I can basically go over here to taxiways and say, okay, well, we'll get off here, and then I will go to, I don't know, a gate over here and accept. So now you can have much more fancier and crazier gating, but it is what it is. So for this flight, we'll turn this on when we get close. We'll see my plane fly into runway 05. We'll barrel down the runway here till we get close to the end, and then we'll take taxiway Bravo to Hotel Alpha, and then come into the gate. Pardon me. So again, that is called Airport Visual System. It lets you set up a destination or origin, an alternate. You can have it as a topical map. You can do taxiways, charts. There's a numerous amount of features in this. It's a couple bucks on the X-Plane store. So one of the better plugins that I bought. There was a free one of these, but the issue I found with it is that you had some really strange key mouse combinations to zoom in and out, and they weren't quite, it wasn't quite visually appealing, such as this particular plugin. Let's check back in. 30 nautical miles until we start our descent into Toronto. So that means slowing down the plane. That means setting up our flaps. That means checking our altimeter, making sure the ILS is set up properly, which we already did, but just double checking. Then that also means fighting with this mode control panel to figure out how we actually descend, because again, the vertical navigation in this aircraft is not simulated. So I've played with vertical speed, I've played with altitude select, I've played with pitch hold, I played with IAS. So far I haven't really been happy with any of them, essentially. So yeah. Okay, so Jim, you are asking what that was, so I'll put a link to that in the chat for you. So bear with me, I'm just trying to find it here. So my web browser's giving me a hard time, so I'll just type it in here. It's Airport Visual System and purchase on the X-Plane org store. One of my favorite plugins right now. Very useful if you're flying on VATSIM. So if you're flying on VATSIM and they give you all kinds of directions, such as, take this particular taxiway, very, very useful. So let's have a look at NaviGraph again. We're approaching our primary VOR, the London VOR. Yankee X-ray uniform is basically the 3-digit alphanumeric code for it. You can see the dots and dashes for the special code there. So we're approaching that. We're going to make a slight right-hand turn. That was Morse code, sorry, the dots and dashes. So we're going to make a right-hand turn. And then we'll start our descent into Toronto from 25,000 feet onto runway 05. So what you're looking at is NaviGraph. It's a paid subscription, about $8.50 Europe, or for us lowly Canadians, about $12 to $14. It has the feature of creating a flight plan. You can also import simbrief.com flight plans. You can look at approach charts. It's spectacular, to be honest with you. So here we are coming into London. We'll fly from London to Cambridge. And I guess earlier I mentioned we were looking at Niagara Falls, and I was incorrect. So it looks like Niagara-on-the-Lake is over here. So it looks like as we leave from London, we will start to see, the Niagara Falls. And I'm hoping that it's a 3D object for it inside X-Plane. That'd be really cool. So again, we're going from London on the way to Cambridge. Hopefully we get to see the falls as we approach Toronto, and we'll be flying into Toronto on runway 05. We'll zoom in here on the map so you guys can see. We're going to try to get to 3,000 feet when we get to Ziggum, and or Ixum, however you pronounce that. And then we got to get to 2,000 feet at Dulpa. I'm not very good at pronouncing these random codes, but it is what it is. And away we go. So, someone asked, is there no ATC? There is air traffic control inside X-Plane. So that is a feature if you choose to use it. But that also means that you're not using your own flight plan. So if you want to create your own flight plan, so on the screen here you see the ticker tape that I have. In order to have that ticker tape, I have to have a flight plan. So for me, I prefer to fly without the air traffic control. I also find the air traffic control in X-Plane is to be desired, as a nice way of putting it. There is a lot of issues there. But with that sim, if you were to fly in that sim, it's real world pilots or people that know how to do this. So that sim might be a option for you. Okay, 3 nautical miles for our top of descent. So let's go ahead and start our descent. And when I say start, that means let's figure out how to do it. So let's start slowing down our aircraft. So I'm going to bring our propellers down. There we go. I'm going to go and put this into vertical speed mode. I'm going to put the nose down by 1,000 feet a minute. And we're now on our way down to 3,000 feet. So I don't know if this is fast enough or slow enough, but I think it will be fine. So we'll do 1,000 feet a minute to start. And I'd like to keep the speed at around 200 knots for our descent. So Jim, no. So generally what I do is I'll buy NaviGraph every other month to kind of update my charts and things like that. So this way I'm staying up to date. And since I generally fly the same handful of airports, you can kind of, download or take a snippet of the most common approach plates and things like that. So ideally, it'd be nice if I could partner with NaviGraph, since I do promote them so much, to maybe get a discount or something like that. But if I do this more often, I'll probably buy a yearly subscription. Just for me, I'm in IT, so I bounce around. I play different games. I'll do FlyJSim. I'll do X-Plane. I'll do Flight Simulator 10. I'll play League of Legends. I'll play No Man's Sky. I'll play a whole bunch of different games. So for me is I create these tutorials and these lessons for people so that when I switch between my games and I come back and then I forget how things are done in X-Plane, I can essentially come back and understand and learn everything that's going on. So I think I got it here. It looks like I'm staying around the 200 range for airspeed. We're going down 1,000 feet per minute. So that's cool. So let's go ahead and set up our course and heading. So our course is going to be 057. So we drag this up here to get the 057. And I wish it was better where it gave me the actual digits, but it doesn't. So I'm going to turn this to what I think is 057. There we go. That's about 057. Perfect. I think if I change the nav source here to ILS like this, no, still doesn't let me change. So that'll do. We'll change the heading to 057 as well. There we go. So I guess I can kind of now use the course to match up with that cyan line. There we go. So I think it's pretty close. So now we have 057 for our heading, 057 for our approach course. Let's just go and check. 10970. That's our ILS. It's plugged in. It's all good. So right now everything's fine. We're descending at 1,000 feet per minute. I'm hoping that's good. Again, usually the flight management computer in Zimo manages everything for you, so you don't really have to know is 1,000 feet per minute too good or too slow. So I'm hoping that this is fine. We'll see. So let's just go check out the chat here for a sec. So Captain says that he pays monthly. So yeah, I want to play on VATSIM more, but I found flying in most Canadian airports, there's rarely an air traffic controller on VATSIM. So almost all the times that I flew from Ottawa or Montreal, there's no one, or Toronto, there's very rarely someone that you would get to interact with. So it's neat to see the people on your map, but you're often talking what they call unicom. So you're kind of textually talking and describing your intentions, but with no air traffic control. If you are flying out of Vancouver or the States, then generally there's someone there for you. But since I often do Ottawa, kind of Montreal, Toronto as my base, only a handful of times have I found someone on VATSIM around, if you will. No, I didn't know that, Jim, so I was looking to see if there was a referral code or something like that on NaviGraph, but I didn't, I wasn't aware, but I love it. The issue I have with monthly fees, there's so many of them. You buy your Netflix, your Amazon Prime, then you buy your VATSIM, and then, so by the time you're done, you're paying, $150 in random monthly fees to all the things that go on in life. So I try my best to keep the monthly fees down to a bare minimum, but NaviGraph has been a really valuable tool if you want to fly. I use SimBrief most of the time when I'm not paying for NaviGraph, and then I find in the States most of the airports have the approach plates. They're just not up to date. But in Canada, I find it's almost impossible to find approach plates, so you almost always have to have NaviGraph. So let's check in. We have 45 nautical miles until we get to Toronto. We're at 18,000 feet, so sorry, till we get to the Toronto VOR. We still have quite a while to go, 100 nautical miles before we get to the airport. So I think we'll be okay at this 1,000 feet per minute. So that's looking good. Speed-wise, we're staying around the 200 mark. So I keep adjusting the throttle a little bit, so you guys can't quite see that when I do that. But I also noticed the yoke disappeared on me, so I don't know if there's a trick to get it back. I tried pressing Y, which is normally the yoke, but that could just be a bug in the aircraft, so not sure why the yoke disappeared, but it did. So maybe there's something here. Toggle, yeah, even when I toggle it like this, it doesn't show, so it must be some random bug with the aircraft. So let's go back to NaviGraph and have a quick look. So we're heading over Cambridge now, so we should start to be able to see Niagara on the lake and Niagara Falls out the window. So let's get outside and look to our right hand side and see if we see that. Lots of fog, so it doesn't look like we're going to see it. Maybe when we break the 10,000 mark, we'll start to see it. But for now, I don't think we're able to see it. I'm going to try a couple different views to see if we can see Niagara on the lake. Doesn't look like it, folks. Doesn't look like we're going to get to see with all the fog. So we have configured everything we need. But we have descended beyond 18,000 feet. So that means we have to now legally go and set our altimeter. So we'll go back to the aviator's tablet here. And we can see that runway 5, our approach course or ILS, but at the bottom here, we can see that the altimeter should be 2980. So we're going to jump back in to the aircraft, and we're going to go over here to this baro set knob and drag it to 2980. There we go. So now we can see the altimeter jump around a little bit. It'll eventually fix itself. 2980. Let's get that in. There we go. Yay! So, and you can see that the altitude actually went down quite a bit. So that's how the altimeter is supposed to work. It's supposed to be what you are above sea level based on the pressure. So the weather impacts the pressure, so you adjust it. So again, above 18,000 feet or the transition altitude, you set the altimeter to 2992. Below 18,000 feet, you set it to whatever the ATIS information report is at that airport. So we're at 15,000 feet, so we dropped 10,000 feet from when we first took off. I start to see some water, so let's try again. Looks like it's not going to be our day. We got too much fog. I guess I could go in and remove the fog, but it is what it is. When we get to 10,000 feet, we'll then slow down a little bit more, maybe to about 160 knots. We're starting to see the terrain information on the screen here. You can see the green. So you can see all the spots that I don't want to be too low for. Our ground speed, 253. Our airspeed, 204. Coming in at a heading of 070. Since we're descending, I have the propeller RPMs down quite a bit to about 519, so we're not that, the engine's not working that hard. And again, this aircraft is a little strange. If you actually bring the throttle back to idle and then go back a little bit more, it's reverse thrust, so you can see kind of down here. It's really strange. So again, I don't know a lot about this aircraft, so it might be a rough landing. We'll have to wait and see. I'm going to try to get to 3,000 feet, which is the minimum altitude that we have defined in our approach charts here. So if we quickly look at the approach charts again, we can see that at XIGAM, we need to be at 3,000 feet. And then we go down to 2,000 feet, and we're then basically on our way down on the ILS approach. So the exciting part of our trip is coming up, folks. So are we still awake? Let's get a shout out in the chat if you guys are still awake. I know it's a long stream. Typically I don't do long streams like that, so give me a shout out, folks, if you're still alive and with me. Tell me if I should never do such a long stream again, or if you enjoyed a longer stream. Let me know if there's different videos that you'd like to see. I really liked an earlier viewer suggestion of a ghetto stream, flying ADF and VORs, so I think I'm going to do that. We're at 12,000 feet, approaching 10,000 feet, where we need to slow down our aircraft a little bit more. Let's have a look at the flight management computer. And let's look at legs. So at Kirpa, we have to be at 3,000 feet. So I think we're going to make it at our current 1,000 feet there. I think we're going to make it. It's going to be close. I might want to bump it up a little bit. Hey, Wayne. Hey, Brian. Thank you. Thanks for joining in there on what I'll call a marathon stream over 2 hours. Thanks, Captain. It could be a crash, is all as I know. This is only the second time. So to recap, I'm flying from Nashville to Ottawa because I recently had a vacation in Nashville. And basically, I wanted to recreate that flight. So I'm flying in a turboprop aircraft that I have never flown more than once before. It does not have an auto throttle. It does not have a vertical VNav that's simulated. So we're hoping for the best is what's going to happen here. So I'm going to increase the vertical navigation here a bit to 1,500 feet per second because I want to make sure that I'm not going to miss this approach. And I'll start slowing down a little more. Yeah, so I need to get to 3,000 feet. I'm at 10,000 feet. I'm just hoping that we're going to make it here. So if I look here, there I am. So it looks like we're going to fly over the airport and then come back. So it is what it is. So I'm just trying to figure out what's going on here. Now, I might have actually missed the approach. I'm not sure. I might be way too high. Let's just have a look here. I think I am. So we'll see if we can counter this in a minute here. So let's look at 0.5. Let's look at the glide slope. I'm way over. Way over. I don't think we're making it. I think we're going to have a little bit of fun and stuff to do. Yeah, so you guys got to learn firsthand. So again, in the Zibble mod, this would have not happened because basically it is essentially covered for you. But because this is not Zibble mod, and this is basically the vertical navigation is all manual, you have to do everything yourself essentially. So yeah. So I just want to find out what this thing's going to do here. So I might still be okay because it looks like it's going back to Dulpa and then it's going to Kerp. So I don't know. I might be okay. We'll see. I don't know what's going to happen here, folks. It's going to be entertaining. So Wayne, I really appreciate you tuning in there. As I was saying, I'm flying a Dash 8 turboprop. It doesn't have the vertical navigation simulated. It doesn't actually have auto throttle simulated. So everything's manual. So essentially what that means for me is that it's going to be rough. I'm doing this all. I'm riding the throttle manually. I'm trying to guess my vertical speed manually. Manuals, essentially what's going to happen here. So I'm trying to get to 3,000 feet so then I can level off and then let ILS take me from there. So we'll see what happens. So we see the Toronto skyline here. Looks beautiful. The scenery is not bad for native Toronto. I'm just using native scenery here, so it's not too bad. So 5,000 feet, 206 knots. Things are looking good. So it looks like it's going to take me on another turn back to runway 5. So I'm hoping this is good. We'll see. Okay, let's go to the overhead control panel. Let's turn on our landing lights. Let's drop the landing gear. Let's have a look. It looks pretty cool on the turboprop. We got our landing gear down. We got our landing lights on. Our speed's dropping. I want it to be 160 anyway, so I'm okay with that. I'll eventually drop the flaps. There we go. I'll drop the flaps down to 5 now. So we can see flaps are at 5. Again, I'm doing most of this all manual. Folks, I tell you, it doesn't even simulate the noise that the ILS makes. I was trying to figure out how to turn on the ILS speakers. It doesn't work either. So again, I'm just warning you not to be negative. I'm warning you so that if you're buying the FlyJSim aircraft expecting all the same capabilities of what you're normally used to, don't. Essentially. Thanks, Jim. Yeah, I really try my best to take the beginner in mind because, to be honest, I'm a beginner. I don't know, you know, I'm not a pilot, so I try to take that in mind as well. So here we go, 2,500 feet. I'm going to find a way to lock in my altitude somehow. I'm going to try to lock in this altitude at 2,500 feet. Let's see what happens here. Let's hope. Okay, our speed is going down, so I need to increase my speed a little bit. From what so take my word with a grain of salt, Brian, but from what I understand, yes, landing lights are always required when you're landing, basically so that people can see you and things like that, or fog. Now, if someone else here knows otherwise, let me know. Again, I'm not a pilot. I'm going from what I read. I'm going from my experience and what I learn. So if someone wants to Google that quick and let me know. I'm finding it difficult because again, I'm riding this throttle. So you can see the speed's 160 is what I'd like to touch down at. And I'm playing with the propeller here. You can see where it says 36. That's basically my propeller speed. So that's kind of there. And again, it also doesn't show me my ILS approach until I get on the approach plates either. So we're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to press a lot of buttons, and I may have to bring this bird down manually, so we'll see. We'll see what happens here. So I'm going to switch the nav source in a minute to ILS. This is Jason's second time flying the Dash 8 turboprop from Bombardier. So I don't know how to land it. I don't know how to fly it, but I'm hanging on. I'm hanging on, folks. And as I mentioned, I'm going to the GoSim Go simulator next Saturday to simulate flying a 737-800 jet. So I'm really, really excited about that. So let's look at the flight management computer here. We're heading into the runway. Maybe. I don't see it yet. Runway not in sight. There is the runway. So I'm hoping I'm not too high for the ILS. But soon I'm going to switch to the nav source here. So here, I'll do that now because I'm not sure what's going to happen here. So let's switch the nav source here to ILS. There we go. And let's turn on the localizer approach. Boop. So I'm above the glide slope here. You can see with the diamonds, which is good. There we go. And I need to go right, essentially, to line up with the runway, so it should do that for me automatically. So I've now turned on the ILS. I'm going to start slowing down, drop the flaps to 10. So it might go a little quick here, folks, because like I said, I have not had a lot of experience with this, and this aircraft is quite manual, so it's nowhere like the Zibbo mod aircraft. So 143, I'm losing speed, so I got to increase my propeller speed here quickly. So it looks like we're on. Looks like we've captured the glide slope. We've captured the localizer. Things are good. We might actually pull off a landing here, guys. We might actually pull it off. So here we go. Captured glide slope. Capture the localizer. Our approach course is set to 057. You can see the altimeter is 2980, which is different than the 2992 that we're used to, because that's what the ATIS information told us to do. We're going to now drop the flaps to 10. So we're going to have a look here. Flaps are now at 10. Speed is kind of hanging around 144, so I don't want it to go much lower, so we'll see. Slower might make things a little smoother. I'm going to drop the flaps again. So we're now at max flaps. You can see our flaps outside, guys. Really nice looking aircraft. And it looks like our autopilot just disengaged for some reason. All right.
Caution.
So we're flying this bird manually. So let's see what happens.
500. Flight slow. Flight slow. Flight slow.
So I need to get some speed.
Flight slow. Flight slow.
We're above the glide slope here, so sorry for this, folks. Again, the second time flying this particular aircraft, so I'm bringing her in manually. We need to get a little lower according to the glide slope here.
Sink rate. Sink rate. Sink rate.
So there we go.
Sink rate. Flight slow.
We got a couple warnings, so be it.
Flight slow.
Let's turn on our plug-in airport visual system.
30. Sink rate. Sink rate.
Oh,
Sink rate.
that wasn't so good, was it, folks?
20, 10.
There we go. All right, better the second time. Again, my second time flying the aircraft, putting the reverse thrusters on. There we go. All right. So we had a little rough time. This is my second time flying the Dash 8 turboprop. I should have came in a little slower. I'm using Airport Visual System to see where I am right now. Yeah, so in for those of you in the Canada, kind of Ontario region, Ottawa, Ontario, there is a, here I'll just go like this to see if we can have the plane follow this in Airport Visual System like this. There we go, sorry. Hard to do 10 things at once, folks. So the place is called GoSim Go. They have a full 737-800 cockpit simulation. So I am really eager to go and try that. So that'd be kind of cool. So my landing was a little rough. I think a few people are going to have a headache. I could have delayed my stream by a couple weeks so that you guys could have seen how you should do it, but this is my second time flying this aircraft, so cut me a little slack. No auto throttle, no vertical navigation simulated in this aircraft. For some reason the autopilot kicked out. Probably because it looked like we were above the glide slope. So a lot of problems all happened at once. I probably should have done a abort and did a turnaround, but we made it. It was rough, but we made it. So it is a simulator, and I do notice on some of my videos, some people take things really seriously. Some folks are writing a lot of comments about speed of my Cessna videos, and what I'll caveat is a lot of the videos I created in the general aviation aircraft I've created almost a year and a half ago when I literally just fired up the simulator for the first time and didn't have a lot of experience in X-Plane. So now I'm learning everything from setting your altimeter to your landing altitudes to you name it. So I'm learning a lot more, but doesn't mean I go in and delete those videos. So, you know, I think what I'm hoping is that you guys realize we're all in this together. So it's a big sim community here, and we're all simming together. So real or not, we're all, you know, learning together. So it's good to make mistakes, and it's good to try to learn from others. So if you guys have recommendations, essentially, of things that I'm doing wrong to fix it, I would like to know. Like that comment earlier about landing lights. I've always seen people turn them on, but I don't know. So those are the things. If you guys find that out, that'd be great to know. So I'm not seeing any gates over here that come out, so I'm just going to go park over here at one of the gates. Hey Noah, we're about to conclude our flight. This has been a marathon stream, 2 hours, 20 minutes, longest stream I've ever done. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We had a rough landing, so I'll be going back to replay the scenario to get an idea of what went wrong, essentially. But we made it. So if you are an enthusiast and really like the Dash 8 aircraft, I would say it's a good buy at $30. But if you're a new to flight simming person like me, it's kind of difficult. So because there's so many things that are not simulated in this aircraft. The vertical navigation's not simulated. The landing altitude's not simulated. There's a lot of things that are not simulated. So I would not recommend a buy of the FlyJSim Dash 8 aircraft unless you're a seasoned pilot and you can fly this bird manually. But if you are, it is a beautiful aircraft. It runs nice. It looks nice. It's great. So thanks again, everybody, for joining my stream. I'll recap one last time. We went from Nashville to Toronto because I recently did a vacation there in Nashville 2 weeks ago. We looked at NaviGraph. We looked at the Dash 8 turboprop aircraft. We created a flight plan, which I showed earlier here so that you guys can follow along. We looked at the plug-in airport Visual Studio. We looked at what an altimeter is and how to set it and how it changes at 18,000 feet. And we had a fun time with our 2 hours and 20 minutes together. So again, if any of you are interested in other topics, earlier I mentioned that I wrote a book about low-carb keto diet, so check out lowcarbcoach.com if you're interested in that. If you have future flights that you'd like me to do, go ahead and let me know in the chat what those are. My next stream, as a streamer mentioned earlier, is going to be Ghetto Day, where we will fly VOR to VOR and ADF to ADF, and we'll put away the GPS and we'll put away the flight management computer, and we will have Ghetto Day. So thanks for joining me. I'm glad you stuck through it. It was a bit rough landing, but we got through it. So thanks again, everybody. Thanks for watching. Great weekend. Have a great weekend and what's left of it, and a great week ahead. And I will be reporting back next week when I check out the real simulator in the GoSim Go, and I'm hoping that they will let me stream that in the future on a GoPro. Again, have a great week ahead.